The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky a fiery orange as Cowboy Jake and his trusty German shepherd Duke rumbled into the forgotten town of Dusty Hollow. The old mansion, with its peeling paint and sagging porch, loomed ahead like a ghost from a storybook, whispering secrets of days long gone. Duke's ears perked up, his nose twitching like a hound on a scent, as if he could smell the adventure waiting just beyond those creaky doors. "Now what do you reckon we'll find in there, boy?" Jake mused, a grin spreading across his sun-kissed face. "Could be a treasure or just a heap of old memories." Duke wagged his tail, his eyes gleaming with the promise of mischief. As they approached the entrance, the wind howled, rattling the shutters like a playful child. Jake chuckled. "Looks like the mansion's got a few stories to tell." But when Duke, ever the curious pup, nudged open a dusty door marked with an eerie symbol, the air thickened like molasses. Something stirred within. An otherworldly rustle echoed through the dimly lit hallway, as if the very walls were alive. Jake's heartbeat quickened. "Well, partner, looks like we've opened a can of worms," he said with a wink, gripping his hat tighter. With a mix of excitement and a dash of apprehension, they stepped. The sun dipped low over the sprawling, dusty plains, casting long shadows from the gnarly trees that seemed to whisper secrets of the past. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and faint echoes of distant thunderstorms, a perfect setting for the day's peculiar escapade. At the heart of it all stood a weather-beaten house, once vibrant with the laughter of children and the warm glow of family gatherings. Now it stood silent, save for the creaking of old floorboards and the occasional rustle of wind through the cracked windows. In this haunted abode, a cowboy awaited with his ever-faithful companion, a robust German shepherd named Duke, whose keen eyes sparkled with curiosity and mischief. With a flick of his hat brim, the cowboy signaled Duke to keep alert. The adventure ahead promised not just mystery, but also the whimsy of their unbreakable bond. The cowboy, a rugged figure clad in denim and leather, had once roamed the vast plains of the West, where the sky kissed the horizon in vibrant hues. He had a knack for wrangling cattle and an even greater talent for finding trouble. While tales of ghostly figures and strange sounds echoed among the townsfolk, he was never one to shy away from a challenge. "Ain't no spirit gonna scare me off," he'd chuckle, his laughter warm and infectious. With Duke by his side, the two of them made quite the pair, a cowboy and his loyal canine navigating the unknown while trading quips that could make a rattlesnake smile. Each venture reinforced their bond, the subtle interplay of trust and camaraderie growing stronger with every step they took into uncharted territory. As they creaked open the door to the old house, dust motes danced like fireflies caught in a lantern's glow, and the smell of musty wood filled the air. Duke sniffed the ground, his tail wagging, seemingly unfazed by the eerie atmosphere. The cowboy jested. "Well, Duke, looks like we're the new tenants, huh? Hope the rent ain't too high." Laughter echoed in the empty halls as they explored the dimly lit rooms, their flashlight beams illuminating faded photographs hanging askew on the walls. Each picture told a story, ghostly faces peering through time, captivating the cowboy's imagination. With Duke at his heels, he pried open an old trunk, revealing dusty trinkets that hinted at the lives once lived there. The thrill of discovery mixed with a light-heartedness that only their shared adventures could bring, turning the gloom of the haunted house into a playful playground of possibilities. Navigating the creaky staircase, the cowboy felt a chill run down his spine, but not from fear. With Duke's unwavering loyalty, his sense of calm returned. "Ain't nothing we can't handle, buddy," he reassured, giving Duke a reassuring pat on the head. Duke's ears perked up at the sound of a faint whisper, a mere breath of wind that tickled the back of the cowboy's neck, making him chuckle nervously. "Must be the ghost of old Joe, still looking for his lost horseshoes." Each creak of the old floorboards echoed with light-hearted banter, their laughter weaving through the shadows that clung to the corners. Together, they transformed what could have been a frightful venture into a delightful escapade, where every corner turned held the promise of a new, slightly bizarre tale waiting to unfold. As the cowboy and Duke delved deeper, the house revealed its secrets, one playful mystery at a time. The air crackled with energy, reminiscent of summer storms just before the downpour. They stumbled upon a hidden door that led to a dusty attic, filled with remnants of forgotten dreams. It was here, amidst the cobwebs and old furniture, that the true magic of their adventures shone bright. The cowboy kneeled down, and Duke nudged a small wooden horse with his snout, unfurling a cascade of laughter from his master. Guess this old boy wasn't just a galloping ghost. The light-hearted humor diffused the tension, and soon the attic was alive with their banter. Each laugh resonated with the spirits of the past, stitching together the fabric of the cowboy's heart with that of his loyal companion, knowing that their bond could conquer any mystery, even the most haunted of houses. A dusty trail led the cowboy and his faithful German shepherd, Duke, to a place that felt like it had been torn from the pages of a ghost story. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the horizon when they stumbled upon an old mansion that seemed to grow right out of the earth. Its white paint was peeling like a sunburnt cowboy's skin, and shutters swung gently, creaking like an old man reminiscing about his youth. Duke's ears perked up, and he gave a low growl, a sound that rumbled from deep within his belly as they approached this looming structure. The atmosphere was thick with mystery, woven together with the scent of sage and the rustling of leaves, as if the very air around them held its breath, waiting for what was to come. As they stepped onto the porch, the cowboy felt an odd sensation, like a chill weaving through his bones. The door swung open with an eerie creak, revealing a dimly lit hallway where shadows danced like they were in on a joke he couldn't quite grasp. Duke, ever the brave companion, trotted ahead, tail wagging with a feigned bravado, while the cowboy chuckled under his breath, trying to dispel the creeping unease. They entered a parlor adorned with dusty furniture draped in white sheets, and the cowboy quipped, "Looks like folks here have been on a long vacation." Duke sniffed at a corner, pulling back as if he'd been told to back away from a rattlesnake, his instincts alerting him to the unfamiliar energy that filled the room. In the center of the parlor stood an old piano, its keys yellowed and cracked, holding each note like a long-forgotten secret. The cowboy approached, feeling both curious and foolish, and struck a note with hesitant fingers, producing a sound that echoed throughout the house, much like a crow's call at dawn. To his surprise, the sound seemed to awaken something in the space, stirring the dust motes in the air as if they were dancers, summoned back to life. Duke, intrigued, hopped onto a nearby chair, his head tilting as if he were trying to decipher the melody. The cowboy laughed, "I reckon you're my biggest fan, partner," as he played a tune that was more of a whimsical attempt than a masterpiece, filling the air with a joyous spirit that temporarily pushed the shadows back. Suddenly, a flicker caught Duke's eye, and with a bark that sounded both excited and alarmed, he bounded toward a staircase hidden behind a tattered curtain. The cowboy, heart racing and laughter bubbling, followed, certain he was in for some shenanigans. As they ascended, the old wooden stairs squeaked beneath their feet, echoing like a chorus of old souls murmuring secrets from another era. On the landing, they found themselves face to face with a portrait of a stern-looking gentleman whose eyes seemed to twinkle with mischief. "What do you think, boy? Should we ask him for directions?" the cowboy teased, giving Duke a nudge as they both examined the painting, feeling a strange connection to the past lingering in the air. At the end of the hallway, a door stood slightly ajar, inviting them into what felt like the heart of the house. The cowboy and Duke exchanged a knowing glance, the kind that spoke volumes about trust and adventure. With a gentle push, they entered the room, revealing a library filled with dusty tomes and an oversized armchair that looked like it had swallowed its last reader whole. As they stepped inside, the cowboy couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, ain't this just a sight for sore eyes?" And with Duke by his side, the two of them dove into the mysteries of the mansion, ready to uncover the stories hidden in its walls. the bond of their friendship stronger than any ghost that dared to haunt them. Beneath the blistering sun, the cowboy adjusted his weathered hat, casting a wary glance at the decrepit old homestead looming before him. The wind whispered through the splintered wood, a haunting melody that sent shivers down his spine. Beside him, Paws, his loyal German shepherd, sniffed the air, ears perked as if he could sense the ghostly tales embedded in the very walls. Rumors spoke of a doorway hidden within this dusty abode, a portal to things better left undisturbed. Yet the cowboy's curiosity, as strong as a stampede, pulled him toward the sagging porch. With each creak of the floorboards, he could almost hear the laughter of old-time ranchers echoing through time. His heart raced. This place was ripe for an adventure, and he could feel the excitement bubbling up inside him, a familiar thrill that only came when he was about to uncover a mystery alongside his four-legged partner. As they stepped inside, the atmosphere thickened like a bowl of Grandma's chili. Sunbeams filtered through cracked windows, illuminating swirling motes of dust dancing in the air. Paws trotted ahead, nose to the ground, occasionally looking back as if to say, "Come on, partner, don't dawdle." The cowboy chuckled, shaking his head at his companion's eagerness. The scent of dampness and age filled the air, mingling with an inexplicable sweetness that seemed to beckon them further into the shadows. They weaved through rooms cluttered with forgotten relics, a dusty phonograph, a tattered quilt, and portraits of grim ancestors watching them with piercing eyes. Each room felt like a riddle, telling stories of heartache and joy, but it was the peculiar draft rattling the door at the end of the hall that captured their attention. The infamous forbidden door stood closed, as if it were guarding secrets as old as the hills. With a determined stride, the cowboy approached the door, feeling an odd mix of trepidation and excitement. He leaned in close, ear pressed against the cool wood, and heard something that resembled a soft whisper. "Did you hear that, Paws?" he asked, half expecting an answer. Paws, ever the faithful companion, sat at his feet, cocking his head to the side, as if considering the implications of the spectral sound. The cowboy grinned, his bravado sparking a light-hearted jest. "Maybe it's just an old ghost looking for a friend." He pulled the handle and felt a strange resistance, as though the door was testing his resolve. With a firm tug, it creaked open, revealing a dark space that smelled of must and the unknown. Beyond lay a staircase winding down into an abyss, each step inviting curiosity, but also caution. This was where the real adventure awaited, where every heartbeat echoed with the promise of discovery and the laughter of those who came before them. With a flicker of a lantern, shadows danced across the stone walls as they ventured downward. Paws, tail wagging like it was chasing a runaway tumbleweed, led the way with youthful exuberance. The air grew cooler, carrying a hush that enveloped them, almost reverent of the history buried below. They entered a cavernous room filled with relics of a bygone era, old saddles, rusted spurs, and faded photographs that told tales of laughter and sorrow. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, sending a pile of dust swirling like a mini tornado. The cowboy laughed, swiping at the air. "Well, shoot! I reckon that's the ghost giving us a proper welcome." Paws barked in agreement, scampering about as if he were chasing the very spirit that had stirred the dust. The cowboy's heart swelled with joy at the sight of his companion so spirited. Together, they were a remarkable team, brave enough to explore the unknown while finding humor in every spook and shake. Just as they thought they'd uncovered all there was to see, a glimmer caught the cowboy's eye. In the far corner, half hidden under a fine layer of dust, was an ornate box, its edges embellished with intricate carvings that spoke of craftsmanship long past. Curiosity piqued. He knelt beside it, brushing away the debris until the wood gleamed in the lantern light. "What do you reckon's inside, Paws? Treasure or trouble?" The German shepherd sniffed the box, tail wagging, seemingly unconcerned about what lay ahead. With a deep breath, the cowboy opened the lid and was met with a collection of old letters tied with a faded ribbon. The words felt like whispers from the past, tales of lost love and longing. As he began to read, the cowboy felt the connection of time. It was here, in this haunted house, where joy and sorrow mingled, just like the bond he shared with his beloved paws. Together, they laughed, cried, and cherished the adventure that had brought them to this moment, proving that even in the most mysterious places, the heart's story would always shine through. The sun hung low, casting long shadows on the porch of the old homestead. The weathered wood creaked like an old man's back as the cowboy leaned against the railing, squinting into the fading light. Beside him, his loyal German shepherd, Hank, sniffed the air, ears perked like radar dishes tuned to an unseen signal. A rustling sound drifted from the barn, a feather-light shudder that sent Hank into a quizzical stance, tail twitching like a lasso in the wind. The cowboy's curiosity stirred like a pot of chili on the stove. He couldn't resist the call of the unknown. He pushed off the railing, tipping his hat back with a grin, deciding to follow the sound that beckoned him. As they approached the barn, the door hung ajar, its hinges protesting like a pack of old hounds. The cowboy reached for the latch but paused, his intuition tingling like a bee in a flower patch. Now, what in tarnation could be stirring up trouble in here? He mused aloud, glancing down at Hank. The German shepherd let out a low woof, as if in agreement, his eyes scanning the dim interior. With a swift kick, the cowboy nudged the door open, revealing a world draped in shadows and dust motes dancing like spirits unleashed from their slumber. Old farming tools leaned against the walls like forgotten friends, and an eerie chill settled in the air, wrapping around them like a thick quilt. Inside, the cowboy spotted an old trunk, its surface marred by time, a perfect candidate for mischief. "Wouldn't it be a hoot if we found some lost treasure?" he said with a chuckle, kneeling beside the trunk and giving Hank an encouraging pat. Hank sniffed the ground, his nose working overtime, as if sensing secrets buried deeper than the trunk itself. With a theatrical flourish, the cowboy raised the lid, revealing a jumble of faded letters and trinkets that looked like they had danced through a century. Each item seemed to whisper stories of yore, the kind that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Well, I'll be a three-legged mule. This don't look like treasure, but it sure is a puzzle," he exclaimed, a grin splitting his weathered face. Just then, a soft rustle echoed from the back of the barn, drawing their attention. "Did you hear that, partner?" The cowboy squinted into the shadows, his heart racing like a wild stallion. Hank's posture shifted, muscles taut, as he stepped forward protectively. With a wink, the cowboy nudged Hank to stay put, slowly approaching the source of the sound. What was it? A ghostly silhouette? A mischievous critter? The anticipation danced in the air, thick as molasses. The cowboy's mind raced with possibilities, each one more outlandish than the last. "If it's a ghost, I reckon I'll just have to ask it to take a load off and join us for supper," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. To their surprise, emerging from the shadows was an old tabby cat, fluffier than a biscuit fresh out of the oven, with an air of nonchalance that could rival any rancher. The cowboy let out a hearty laugh, the sound echoing through the barn, making Hank cock his head in confusion. Well, well, if it ain't just another critter looking for a place to nap." He reached down to scratch the cat behind its ears as Hank sniffed curiously, tail wagging in a slow rhythm. The mystery of the barn shifted from ominous to delightful, the bond between the cowboy and his four-legged companion strengthening with each shared chuckle. In that moment, the adventure turned from a spine-tingling chase to a warm-hearted tale, revealing that sometimes the biggest surprise comes in the smallest packages, full of heart and a touch of humor. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows through the weathered porch of the old Smith place. Dust motes danced in the golden light as the cowboy leaned against the splintered railings, surveying the dilapidated structure before him. His loyal German shepherd, Paws, sat at his side, ears perked, nostrils flaring as though catching a whiff of something that tickled his fancy. The wind whispered secrets through the cracked windows, and even the old barn owl perched atop the roof seemed to shiver with anticipation. "What's got your tail in a twist, boy?" The cowboy chuckled, scratching paws behind the ears, oblivious to the unsettling energy that hung thick in the air like a foggy morning. But Paws, with his keen instincts, wasn't just hearing old creaks. He was sensing something eerie that made the cowboy's heart skip a beat. With a sudden flip of his tail, Paws darted towards the creaking door, his nose leading the charge like a trusty compass. The cowboy couldn't help but chuckle as he watched the dog's enthusiastic antics. "You're supposed to be my guard dog, not a ghost buster," he hollered after him, but he couldn't deny a flicker of unease stirring within him. Paws paused at the threshold, sniffing with fervor, his body tense as if he were on the edge of a great discovery. The cowboy reached for his trusty old hat, adjusting it nervously while his heart raced in rhythm with Paws' excited panting. "What in tarnation are you sniffing out, buddy?" he muttered, half serious, as he took a courageous step forward. The door creaked open, exhaling a gust of stale air that seemed to whisper tales of long-gone residents. As they entered the dimly lit hallway, Paws took point, ears perked and nose low to the ground. The atmosphere felt thick, like molasses in July, and each step echoed with uncertainty. The cowboy felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed through, inspired by Paws' unwavering confidence. Suddenly, the dog stopped dead in his tracks, staring intently at a dusty old painting hanging crooked on the wall. It depicted an elegant woman in a long gown, her eyes seemingly following them as they passed. "You see that too, huh?" the cowboy asked, half laughing, half nervous. "I'd say you've got a nose for the dramatic," Paws barked softly as if to say, "I'm serious, cowboy." The cowboy raised an eyebrow, feeling the weight of his dog's instinct, finding comfort in their shared adventure, even in the face of strangeness. In the silence that followed, a faint rustling broke through the stillness, causing Paws to whirl around with his hackles raised. The cowboy's heart thumped like a runaway horse as he squinted into the shadows. "Now don't go getting all riled up on me, Paws," he whispered, trying to calm both himself and the dog. With a deep breath, he tried to play it cool, slapping the dust off his trousers like they were about to go on a Sunday ride. The further they ventured into the house, the more Paws' demeanor shifted. The once energetic dog now moved with a careful grace, as if they were tiptoeing through a field of daisies, aware of unseen dangers. "You'd think we were hunting ghosts or something." The cowboy chuckled nervously, admiring his faithful companion's instincts that always seemed to guide them through thick and thin. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Paws stopped once more, this time before an old dusty mirror that hung on the wall. The cowboy squinted at his own reflection and then back at Paws, whose eyes glinted with something otherworldly. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, feeling the thin line between the living and the spirit world blur for a brief second. The sunlight caught the mirror just right, and as the cowboy leaned closer, he thought he glimpsed a flicker of movement behind him. "You gotta be kidding me," he muttered, swiping at the air as Paws barked once again, this time a warning yelp that echoed through the eerie stillness. With his heart racing and laughter trembling at the edges of fear, the cowboy steadied himself, realizing that with Paws by his side, the adventure was only just beginning. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the wrinkled face of the old homestead. Its splintered wood and sagging porch seemed to whisper secrets of the past, inviting the cowboy and his faithful German shepherd, Duke, to step inside. The door creaked open with a groan that echoed like a cow's mournful moo in the stillness of the evening. Dust motes danced in the fading light, swirling like old memories, and Duke's ears perked up, his eyes wide as he sniffed the musty air. The cowboy chuckled. "Well, Duke, looks like we're in for a bit of fun. Just us and the ghosts of the past. Hope they're friendly." As they ventured deeper into the heart of the house, a sudden gust rattled the windows, sending an old tin can tumbling across the floor. Duke yelped, his fur bristling as he darted behind the cowboy, who couldn't help but laugh. "Ain't nothing but the wind, buddy. Just the house settling its bones." But as they climbed the stairs, a faint yet distinct voice called out from within the walls, barely audible. The cowboy paused, heart racing like a galloping horse. "Did you hear that, Duke? Seems like our new friends are a bit chatty tonight." The voice, soft as a breeze rustling through the prairie grass, repeated a word, "Help!" The cowboy's brow furrowed, curiosity piqued. "Now what do you reckon that means? Ghostly folks looking for a hand?" Duke tilted his head, a puzzled expression on his canine face, tail wagging slightly as if he were up for a new adventure. The cowboy scratched his chin, contemplating. "We can't leave a soul in need hanging, even if they are of the spectral variety." With a determined nod, they pressed on, following the sound that tickled their ears like a familiar tune. As they reached the attic door, it swung open with a theatrical creak, revealing a tangle of old furniture draped in dusty sheets. The voice grew stronger, more insistent, almost as if it were beckoning them closer. "Here we go, Duke. Let's not keep our new friend waiting." Duke bounded ahead, sniffing eagerly, his instincts honing in on the mystery. The cowboy chuckled to himself. "You know, this is just like old Bob back at the feed store. Always needing a hand but never asking for it properly." Golden light from a nearby window illuminated the attic, and the cowboy and Duke crept forward, the anticipation thick enough to slice with a butter knife. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, flapping the sheets like wild prairie flowers in a storm, and the voice erupted once more, clearer now. "Please, find me." The cowboy's heart raced as he exchanged a knowing glance with Duke, who seemed equally excited, if not a little confused. "Looks like we've stumbled onto a real humdinger, Duke. Let's see what kind of trouble we can rustle up." Stepping further into the attic, they spotted an old trunk tucked in the corner, worn and weathered. "You reckon our buddy's hiding in there?" the cowboy asked with a grin. With a gentle nudge from Duke's eager nose, the trunk creaked open, revealing a dusty old journal that glimmered with possibilities, a key to solving the mystery that had summoned them there. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dilapidated porch of the old Thompson homestead, the cowboy rummaged through his shabby satchel, a twinkle of mischief in his eye. Beside him, his trusty German shepherd, Duke, sniffed the air, ears perked up for any signs of trouble, or perhaps just a particularly tasty rabbit. The creaking floorboards echoed a spectral symphony as the cowboy leaned against the crooked railing, a grin spreading across his sun-weathered face. "Duke, you ever wonder why ghosts never lie?" He chuckled, his voice a country drawl that danced on the cool evening breeze. Duke tilted his head, as if waiting for the punchline. "'Cause you can always see right through 'em." The cowboy erupted into a hearty laugh, the sound of it mingling with the rustle of the leaves, while Duke responded with an amused bark, as if understanding every word. With night wrapping around them like a heavy quilt, the duo ventured deeper into the spooky abode. The dim light from the cowboy's lantern flickered, casting a ghostly glow on the peeling wallpaper. A chill ran down the cowboy's spine, though he'd never admit it. "You know, Duke," he said, glancing back at his companion, "I heard tell that this place is haunted by the spirit of old Thompson himself. Says he can still be seen searching for his lost cattle." Duke growled softly, his canine instincts on high alert. "Don't worry, pal," the cowboy reassured, swaggering forward with his trademark bravado. "If he shows his face, I reckon I'll just ask him how he lost 'em in the first place. Maybe he's got a good excuse, like he left 'em at the bar." The glow from the lantern illuminated Duke's eyes, and together they pushed into the shadows, laughter echoing through the empty halls. An occasional creak of wood made the hair on the back of the cowboy's neck stand up, but he shook it off, bouncing back with a quip born from years of living on the edge. "Well, Duke, if you hear an eerie moan, don't fret. It's probably just the sound of old Thompson trying to order a whiskey." A low growl erupted from Duke as he trotted ahead, clearly unimpressed with the idea of an invisible rancher seeking drinks at a non-existent saloon. The cowboy chuckled, patting Duke's strong back. "Maybe he's just looking for a good ghost story to spin around the campfire. You know how ranchers are, always up for a tall tale or two." As they ventured further into the house, echoes of laughter intermingled with the house's creaks, painting a comforting picture amidst the unease. In the dim light of the living room, dust motes swirled in midair, and the cowboy couldn't resist one more joke to lighten the mood. "Duke, what do you reckon a ghost's favorite dessert is? You know, to keep things sweet?" Duke's ears perked up as if urging the cowboy to reveal the punchline. "Blueberry pie," he exclaimed with a hearty laugh that could wake the dead if they were sleeping in the next room. Duke, with an exaggerated huff, seemed to roll his eyes, as if to say that even spectral humor had its limits. As the cowboy playfully nudged Duke with his boot, they both felt the weight of the house press in, but the laughter, a unique bond forged in the glow of companionship, kept the shadows at bay. By the time they reached the kitchen, the cowboy had amassed a treasure trove of jokes, ready to unleash them on whatever phantom might cross their path. "Duke, if we run into old Thompson, I'll tell him, why don't ghosts make good detectives? Because they can never get to the bottom of things." The pair shared a knowing glance, Duke's tail wagging at the thought of scaring away the spooks with silly banter instead of fear. As the cowboy leaned against the time-worn table, a sudden crash echoed from the cellar below. Duke perked up, muscles tensed, but instead of fear, a chuckle escaped the cowboy's lips. "Looks like old Thompson's got a real knack for coming in uninvited." With a courageous grin and a playful tug on Duke's collar, they headed toward the cellar door, ready to face the unknown, laughter lighting the way through the eerie darkness. The old mansion loomed on the outskirts of town, its weather-beaten facade a ghostly silhouette against the twilight sky. The wooden planks creaked under the weight of time, whispering tales that crawled through the cowboy's mind like a swarm of fireflies in a summer night. His trusty German shepherd, Duke, trotted alongside him, tail wagging with an enthusiasm that seemed to disregard the chill that hung in the air. As they stepped onto the porch, a shudder of wind sent leaves swirling, wrapping the duo in a shroud of mystery. The flickering lantern light cast shadows that danced like lost souls, igniting the cowboy's curiosity. He chuckled softly, tipping his hat. "Ain't nothing but a ghost or two, Duke. Just a bit of old-fashioned intrigue." Duke looked up, his ears perked, as if he understood every word. The duo shared a glance, a silent pact made. Whatever lay beneath the peeling paint and dusty floorboards, they'd face it together. Pushing, the front door creaked open with the groan of a long-forgotten secret, revealing an entryway cloaked in dust motes and moonlight. The chandelier overhead hung precariously, like it might just tumble down with a good sneeze. Duke sniffed the air, his nose twitching as if piecing together a puzzle left unsolved for decades. Creaking boards beneath the cowboy's boots echoed like an old ghostly melody. He couldn't help but laugh. "Well, partner, looks like we got ourselves a real fixer-upper. Maybe we can trade it for a few cows." Duke gave a playful bark, lunging towards a corner where a peculiar shadow flitted. A dust rabbit darted out, and the cowboy chuckled. "You scared of a lil' old critter, Duke?" The dog puffed his chest, pacing with bravado, then glanced back at his human, eyes gleaming with both courage and mischief. They took their first steps into the parlor, ready for whatever shenanigans awaited them. The air thickened with an unshakable weight, as if the walls were holding their breath. The cowboy leaned against the wall, catching sight of portraits that had long lost their luster. Faces stared back, their eyes following him like curious crows, each one more peculiar than the last. "Wonder if they knew about the ghost that runs the place," he mused aloud, a smirk creeping up his face. Duke, ever the protector, barked softly, his fur bristling as he caught sight of a flicker in the corner of the room. The cowboy reached down, scratching behind Duke's ears. "Ain't no need to fret, boy. They might just be looking for a good laugh." But deep down, the unease settled like a lead weight. With a deep breath, he opened a nearby door, revealing a dusty old library, where the air tasted of secrets and whispers. "Well, Duke, it's either a treasure trove of dusty books or a pile of ghostly pranks. Let's find out." In the library, the shelves towered like old sentinels, their spines cracked and weathered. Duke padded silently, his snout brushing against the edges of forgotten tomes. The cowboy ran his fingers along the shelves, feeling the history seep into his skin. "Look at this one, Duke," he said, pulling out a book with a frayed cover. As he flipped it open, a gust of wind swept through the room, tossing papers into the air like startled birds. "Whoa there! I reckon the ghosts are getting a bit feisty," he laughed, ducking as a wayward sheet flitted past his head. Duke barked in agreement, chasing after the papers as if they were a wild hare. "You ever think they just want to play?" the cowboy mused aloud. Amid the dust and mystery, laughter echoed. It was a strange sense of camaraderie, as if the very spirits of the house were joining them in a light-hearted game of hide-and-seek. As the evening wore on, shadows deepened, and flickering candlelight cast eerie shapes on the walls. The cowboy and Duke huddled close, sharing a moment of warmth amidst the chill. "We might not solve this mystery tonight, but I'll be darned if we don't have a good time trying," he said, a twinkle in his eye. The old mansion became a playground of the unknown, each creak and groan an invitation to unravel the tales embedded in its bones. Duke, ever the brave companion, leaned against his master, eyes scanning the room for signs of mischief. Together, they conjured tales of cowboys and spirits, mixing humor and heart like an old-timey recipe. The bond between them deepened with every mystery unraveled, reminding them that even in the haunted corners of their lives, laughter could cut through the darkness, shining brighter than any ghost's glow. The old western house loomed ahead, its weathered boards creaking like an old man's bones, each squeak echoing in the silence of the evening dusk. The cowboy stood at the threshold, squinting into the dim abyss, while his faithful companion Paws sniffed the air with a determination that could rival a bloodhound on a hot trail. "Now, Paws, what do you smell?" he asked, tipping his hat back and letting the evening breeze ruffle his hair. The dog's tail wagged furiously, whisking up a cloud of dust that hung in the air like ghosts waiting to be unleashed. With a flick of his wrist, the cowboy pulled out a flashlight, illuminating the cobwebs that danced in the corners, giving the illusion that the house itself was alive. "Guess the spooks ain't too keen on company," he chuckled, stepping over the threshold, the old wood groaning under his weight. Paws, ever the brave one, darted into the house, his paws pattering against the wooden floorboards. The cowboy followed, chuckling as the dog's excitement turned into an eager search, snuffling through forgotten nooks and crannies. Paws paused suddenly, his nose pressed against the wall, as if a secret was hidden beneath layers of dust and time. "What's got you riled up, boy?" The cowboy bent down, following Paws' gaze to an old picture frame hanging lopsided, featuring a family that looked like they'd just stepped off the pages of history. "You reckon the key to our little mystery is behind there?" he mused, feeling that familiar tingle of adventure sparking in his chest. He gave the frame a gentle nudge, and it swung slightly, exposing a ghostly outline on the wall behind it. Paws wasn't done yet. He barked, drawing the cowboy's attention back to the floor, where a knot in the wood seemed a tad too inviting. The dog scratched at it, his enthusiasm palpable. "Well, I'll be," the cowboy exclaimed, kneeling down for a closer look. "Looks like you found us a treasure map, partner." He reached for the knot, giving it a twist, and with a satisfying click, a small compartment popped open, revealing a rusted key nestled in the dust. It looked as if it had been waiting for a century, its metal glinting dimly in the flashlight's beam. "See that, Paws? You've got the nose for treasure?" The cowboy laughed, ruffling the dog's ears, their bond as strong as the old oak beams above them. The key hung heavy in the cowboy's hand, a tangible piece of the house's long-lost past. "I reckon it's time we find out what this bad boy unlocks." They moved deeper into the shadows, Paws leading the way, his tail wagging like a flag of victory. The heart of the house beckoned, a whisper of secrets long buried beneath the dust. "Let's hope it ain't some old ghost looking for company," the cowboy joked, stepping cautiously behind Paws. The dog's nose twitched, catching scents of age and dust. Each creak underfoot felt like they were walking through the pages of an open book, the stories trapped behind the walls yearning to be told. With a gentle nudge, Paws came to a stop before a heavy door, its surface engraved with intricate patterns that told tales of yesteryears. The cowboy raised the key, his heart racing with anticipation. "You ready for this, old pal?" Paws looked up, his eyes wide and trusting, as if he understood that this was a moment steeped in destiny. "Here goes nothing." The cowboy inserted the key into the lock, twisting it slowly, the mechanism responding with a groan that echoed like thunder in the stillness. The door creaked open, revealing a room cloaked in shadows, but the excitement in Paws' stance told everything. The real adventure was just about to begin. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Cowboy leaned against the weathered porch railing of the old Sullivan place, a crumbling relic of a bygone era. Beside him, Paws, his loyal German shepherd, sniffed the air, ears perked for any sign of trouble. The stories had been swirling around the town like tumbleweeds, tales of a door that had never been opened. Folks whispered that it held secrets darker than the deepest canyon crevice. With a brave grin, Cowboy scratched Paws behind the ears. "What do you reckon, partner? Ready for a little adventure?" Paws wagged his tail, a glint of mischief in his amber eyes. A rustle in the wind seemed to echo their thoughts, and Cowboy's heart quickened. He'd never been one to shy away from a peculiar situation, especially not with Paws at his side, ready to chase down any specter that dared to loom in the shadows. With flashlight in one hand and a trusty lasso dangling from his belt, Cowboy creaked the old door open, the hinges groaning like an old man waking from a long nap. Dust motes danced in the beam as they stepped inside. The air felt thick, almost as if the shadows themselves were holding their breath. Paws sniffed at the floorboards, where long-forgotten memories lingered like ghosts trapped in a glass jar. Each room was a time capsule, the faded wallpaper peeling away like the layers of an ancient onion. As they wandered deeper, the cowboy's boots echoed against the wooden planks, creating a melody of adventure. "You hear that, Paws? Sounds like someone's counting the stars inside this place." He chuckled, and Paws tilted his head, unamused. Suddenly, a distant thud reverberated through the halls, sending a shiver down Cowboy's spine. Paws stood alert, muscles taut, as he let out a low growl that echoed Cowboy's mounting curiosity. They reached a narrow hallway, where wall-mounted portraits seemed to watch their every move. One frame, in particular, caught Cowboy's eye, a stern-looking woman with piercing eyes almost daring him to approach. He shook his head. "Well, ain't you a sight for sore eyes? I'd ask if you had a secret, but I reckon you're not the chatty type." As he leaned closer, Paws nudged him playfully, reminding him of their objective. Cowboy straightened, letting out a hearty laugh that bounced off the aged walls. It was a reminder of what truly mattered in this eerie abode. Camaraderie and a sprinkle of humor to lighten the mood. "All right, partner, let's find that door. I've got a heap of questions, and I reckon this old house has some answers waiting for us." With renewed determination, they marched onward, the bond between them stronger than any ghostly presence lurking nearby. Turning a corner, they finally stumbled upon the fabled door. It was ornately carved, the wood darkened with age, and adorned with symbols that made Cowboy's brow furrow. "This must be it, Paws, the legendary door nobody's supposed to open," he whispered. Paws sniffed the air around it, ears flicking at every creak from the house. Cowboy placed a hand on the door, feeling a strange warmth radiate from the wood. "You think it's really haunted?" he mused aloud, glancing at Paws, who was now wagging his tail like a flag in a windstorm. "I'm starting to think this could be just a lot of hot air," Cowboy laughed, though the unease in his chest made it clear he wasn't entirely sure. With a deep breath and a shared nod from Paws, he reached for the handle, ready to unveil whatever had been tucked away for years. With a groan, he turned the handle, and the door creaked open with a reluctant sigh, revealing a small, dust-filled room. Inside, cobwebs hung like curtains, and a chest sat in the middle, seemingly untouched for decades. Cowboy's eyes widened as he stepped inside, Paws right on his heels, eyes darting about. "Well, what do we have here?" he whispered, trying to contain his excitement. Just as Cowboy knelt to examine the chest, a gust of wind swept through the room, sending a shiver down his spine. Paws barked, fur bristled, and Cowboy couldn't help but chuckle. "Looks like we've stirred up the neighborhood." Together, they lifted the chest lid, and as it creaked open, a cascade of glittering old coins sparkled in the dim light. Cowboy leaned back, astonished. "Well, pause. Seems like this old house isn't as empty as it looks." In that moment, the bond between man and dog shined bright against the haunting backdrop, a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures lie within the peculiar and the unknown. The wind whistled through the cracked windows of the old McKinley house as the cowboy stepped inside, a dusty hat tipped low over his brow. His faithful German shepherd, Duke, padded silently beside him, ears perked like radar dishes ready to pick up the faintest rustle or creak of the floorboards. The interior smelled of mildew and forgotten memories, shrouded in a thick layer of dust that caught the golden rays of afternoon sunlight. Each step stirred up ghostly whispers of the past, as if the house itself was sharing tales with the cowboy. Tales of laughter, heartache, and perhaps a few unfinished business among its departed denizens. The cobwebs danced like specters, swaying in rhythm with the cowboy's heart, which felt a peculiar tug, as if the spirits were beckoning him further into their realm. Duke, ever the brave companion, suddenly halted in the hallway, nose twitching and eyes alert. The cowboy chuckled softly. "What's the matter, partner? Ain't nothing but an old ghost or two, you big lummox." But deep down, he felt a shiver crawl up his spine. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a shadow darting across the wall. "Did you see that, Duke?" he whispered, gripping the handle of his lasso tightly. The shepherd barked softly, as if to say, "Let's get to the bottom of this, boss." With a shared glance that spoke volumes, their bond solidified. They were a duo destined to uncover the secrets hiding in the corners of this dilapidated abode. As they ventured deeper, the cowboy stumbled upon a tattered rocking chair that swayed ever so slightly, despite the still air. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, scratching his head. "Ain't nobody here but us, and a whole mess of ghosts." He sat down in the creaky chair, the wood groaning beneath his weight. Duke went to sniff at a dusty photograph on the mantel, his tail wagging slowly. The cowboy leaned closer, squinting at the faded image of a family, their smiles frozen in time. "Looks like they had as much fun as we do, eh, Duke?" he remarked, chuckling at the thought of a ghostly square dance. The air thickened with the essence of nostalgia, yet the cowboy couldn't help but feel a sense of joy, realizing the spirit still lingered, perhaps relishing the laughter that once filled these walls. Then a soft melody drifted through the air, an old tune that tugged at the cowboy's heart. "Now that's a sweet sound, ain't it?" he whispered, swaying to the ghostly notes that seemed to rise from the very floorboards beneath him. Duke sat attentively, listening as if he too could decipher the words of the long gone. The cowboy stood up, twirling around the room, moving like a spectral partner in an invisible dance. "Look at us, Duke. We're just a couple of old fools having a hoedown with the spirits." Laughter bubbled from his chest, infectious and warm, filling the empty space with life. Duke joined in, barking and bounding, his playful energy a testament to their enduring bond, a bridge between the living and the ethereal. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the floor, the cowboy felt a palpable sense of connection. "This place ain't just haunted, it's alive with stories," he mused. With each creak and whisper, it was clear that the memories were not just remnants, but rather echoes that sought companionship. "You and me, Duke," he said, pulling his hat off and wiping the sweat from his brow. "We're the keepers of this tale now." Together, they stood in the fading light, a rugged cowboy and his loyal dog, ready to take on the spectral adventures lying ahead. In that haunted western house, they forged a bond not just with each other, but with the stories of the past, forever intertwined in a tapestry of light mystery and the heartwarming essence of life, both past and present. The old creaking floorboards of the haunted Westwood Manor groaned underfoot as the cowboy tiptoed through the dimly lit hallway, his trusty hat perched atop his head. Paws, his loyal German shepherd, padded silently beside him, her ears pricked up and tail a-wagging, a picture of keen awareness amid the eerie atmosphere. The cowboy shot a sideways glance at her, half amused and half worried, as she seemed more fascinated than frightened by the shadows lurking in the corners. "You're a whole lot braver than most folks, Paws," he mused, stifling a chuckle. "I reckon you'd give a rattlesnake a run for its money, wouldn't you?" The dog looked up with an expression that could only be described as both proud and puzzled, as if she were trying to figure out why her human was making such a fuss over old, spooky woodwork. A sudden gust of wind ruffled the curtain at the end of the hall, causing Paws to jump a little and bark, her bravado instantly replaced with a comical look of bewilderment that made the cowboy laugh outright. "Now, don't you go being scared, girl. I'm the one who ought to be worried," he said, patting Paws affectionately. But of course she took no heed. With a confident trot she forged ahead, sniffing the air as if to sniff out the mystery hidden within the manor's walls. "You think there's a ghost in this here house? Maybe an old-timer who just can't let go of his beans and cornbread?" The cowboy squinted at a portrait of a stern-looking gentleman hung crookedly on the wall. Paws, however, wasn't interested in spectral beings. She was more fixated on the faint sound of something rustling behind a door further down the hallway. With a determined bark, she set off, tail wagging fiercely as the cowboy hurried to keep pace. "Whoa now, Paws. Don't go chasing what you can't see. I ain't got my ghost-busting badge yet." His voice echoed humorously, highlighting their playful banter as they navigated through the mysteries of the old house. As they rounded the corner, Paws stopped short, her nose squished against a dusty old chest situated in the middle of the room. Well, well, what do we have here?" the cowboy asked, raising an eyebrow. "A treasure chest or just a bunch of mothballs?" To add a little flair of drama, he drew out a rusty old crowbar from his back pocket, brandishing it like a sword. "Behold, the brave cowboy rides again." He met Paws's doe-eyed stare, her tail wagging as if she were cheering him on. With a theatrical flourish, he pried open the chest, but instead of gold doubloons, a cloud of dust erupted into the air, causing both of them to cough and sneeze. Paws sneezed exaggeratedly, her head shaking comically, and the cowboy laughed. "Well, that settles it. Nothing but old memories and bad cologne in here," he mocked, waving away the dust, as if it were the ghost's lingering spirit. Their banter continued as they sifted through the chest's contents, revealing cracked photographs and old newspapers that told tales of the house's long-forgotten past. "Look at this here," the cowboy said, holding up a photo of a woman in a long dress, her expression mysteriously somber. "You reckon she's the ghost that's been haunting my dinner plate?" With a twinkle in his eye, he turned to Paws, who was busy pawing at a yellowed paper, making it crinkle under her touch. "I'd say she'd be putting her ghostly foot down about your supper if she could see how much you're dropping." The two shared a hearty laugh, a blend of warm camaraderie and playful teasing, as they continued exploring the dusty relics of the past in their light-hearted fashion. Just as they were about to leave the room, Paws suddenly perked her ears and tilted her head, as if sensing something amiss. "What is it, girl? You smell something?" The cowboy followed her gaze to an open window flapping in the breeze. "Ah, so that's it. You think it's a ghost trying to make an escape, huh?" He chuckled, shaking his head at the imaginative spirit of his companion. The light-hearted bickering escalated as the cowboy began mimicking the ghost's mannerisms, flailing his arms and groaning dramatically. "Ooh, I'm just a lonely spirit looking for my lost doggy treat." Paws responded with a playful bark, bounding toward him as if to say that she was indeed the clever canine ready to save the day. The bond between them shone brighter than the flickering lantern that illuminated their adventure, each moment a testament to friendship forged in laughter, mystery, and a sprinkle of the supernatural. The old western house loomed under the moonlight, its weathered boards creaking like the bones of an old man. Cowboy adjusted his Stetson, squinting at the gnarled oak door painted a ghostly white, covered in splatters of faded gold. Beside him, Paws, his loyal German shepherd, sniffed the ground with that keen sense only dogs possess, tail wagging like a flag in a stiff wind. Together they stepped inside, the air thick with dust bunnies floating like lost spirits. The wooden floorboards groaned in protest, seeming to grumble, "Not again." Cowboy chuckled. "What y'all afraid of? It's just a house." Paws paused, ears perked up, as if he'd heard a whisper in the shadows. The entryway opened into a grand hall, filled with furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts of the past. Cowboy lifted a corner of one sheet to reveal a piano, its keys yellowed and cracked. "Well, now ain't this a sight?" he exclaimed, running his fingers along the keys, producing a haunting melody that echoed off the walls. Paws tilted his head, confused, as a shiver danced up Cowboy's spine. "Sounds like the spirits want to join in," he joked, a laugh bubbling up through the unease. Yet the air shifted, shadows flickering in the candlelight, teasing the edges of their vision. Cowboy brushed it off, turning instead to a dusty bookshelf. "Maybe we'll find a treasure or two amongst the cobwebs." Dust motes danced in the dim light as Cowboy rummaged through the shelves, pushing aside old leather-bound books and knickknacks that had seen better days. He chuckled when Paws unearthed an ancient tin box, barking excitedly as if he'd struck gold. "Well, looky what you got there, partner," Cowboy said, kneeling beside him. Paws nudged the box, his nose dusting off the grime, revealing intricate carvings of roping cowboys and wild horses. Cowboy pried it open, revealing a hodgepodge of trinkets, old coins, a rusted pocket watch, and a faded map that looked more like a treasure map than anything else. "What do you reckon, Paws? A treasure hunt in the middle of a haunted house?" He could almost see the wheels turning in Paws' head, as if he were plotting their next escapade. As they studied the map, a low moan echoed through the hall, causing Cowboy to freeze mid-sentence. Paws stood tall, ears angled like radar dishes, ready for action. "Now, that right there sounds like trouble," Cowboy whispered, his heart thumping like a jackrabbit on the run. "We should hightail it out of here or see what's making that racket." Paws, seemingly weighing the options, barked as if to say, "You can't let a little ghost scare ya." Cowboy smirked at the dog's bravery and glanced back at the treasure box. "You're right. Gotta find the source of the noise." With a nod of agreement, they set off down the narrow hallway, leaving behind the unsettling sounds of the past. The hallway twisted and turned as they ventured deeper into the unknown, the shadows thickening like molasses in winter. With each step, Cowboy felt the thrill of adventure surge within him, and Paws charged ahead, tail wagging like a happy flag. Pausing, Cowboy caught sight of a door ajar, light spilling out like a beacon. "Now ain't that a curious sight?" he said, motioning for Paws to be quiet. Paws' eyes sparkled with excitement, and he lunged towards the door, eager to stake their claim on the next mystery. Cowboy chuckled, marveling at their bond, the fearless pup and the cautious cowboy, ready to tackle whatever awaited them. With a deep breath, Cowboy pushed the door open as the scent of adventure wafted in, swirling around them like a warm embrace. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the dilapidated wooden house that stood like a weary sentinel at the edge of the prairie. Dust swirled around the cowboy and his faithful German shepherd, Duke, as they cautiously approached the creaking front door. It squeaked ominously, as if warning them to turn back, but curiosity tickled the cowboy's fancy. "Well, Duke, looks like we're about to step into a tale that's long gone and all but forgotten," he said with a smirk, giving Duke an affectionate scratch behind the ears. With a quizzical tilt of his head, Duke barked softly, as if to say, "Let's get this show on the road." As they entered, the air felt thick with a history that whispered secrets from the corners of the room. Dust motes danced in the fading sunlight, making it seem like the house itself was breathing, alive with memories. They ambled across creaky floorboards toward the grand parlor, where a portrait hung, its frame ornate yet tarnished. The painting depicted a stern-looking lady, her eyes seemingly following them with an unsettling intensity. The cowboy chuckled nervously. I reckon she didn't take kindly to visitors. Duke, ever the faithful companion, sniffed the base of the portrait, a slight wag of his tail suggesting he sensed something amiss. Upon closer inspection, the cowboy noticed something peculiar about the painting. The lady's lips parted ever so slightly, and what appeared to be a thread of shimmering light seemed to emerge from the corner of her mouth. Well, I'll be... How about that? He gasped. He pointed it out to Duke, who tilted his head in confusion, as if trying to decode the silent message. Looks like she's got something to say. The cowboy leaned in, squinting at the portrait with the kind of intensity usually reserved for a high-stakes poker game. The light flickered, revealing letters etched into the frame, almost as if inviting them to decipher the message hidden in plain sight. With a playful nudge of his elbow, the cowboy muttered, "What do you reckon, Duke? Looks like we're in for a riddle or two." He pulled out his trusty notepad, already envisioning the legendary tales they'd spin about this haunted house. Duke barked enthusiastically, as if sharing in his excitement. Let's see here. Courage you must possess to find what's lost in distress. Sounds like a fair challenge for a cowboy and his dog, don't you think? Duke responded with a tail wag and an eager leap, as if to say, "Bring it on!" The cowboy chuckled, already feeling the thrill of adventure bubbling up inside him. As they pieced together the clues from the portrait, the atmosphere shifted ever so slightly. A breeze whispered through the broken windows, carrying an echo of laughter that sent a shiver down the cowboy's spine. "You know, I wasn't expecting a ghostly giggle today, Duke," he said with a wry grin. The German shepherd turned toward the sound, ears perked up and alert, embodying the spirit of a brave sidekick. "Well, my friend, we've got a mystery to unravel, and I reckon this lady's got a tale that'll warm our hearts before the day's end." The cowboy set his sights on the next clue, emboldened by the bond he shared with Duke, ready to dive deeper into the mystery of the haunting portrait. The morning sun peeked through the rickety shutters of the old McGraw house, casting slanted beams of light that danced across the creaky floorboards. As the cowboy stepped gingerly into the dusty parlor, Paws, his trusty German shepherd, sniffed the air with his nose wrinkling in excitement. Dust motes floated lazily in the sunbeams as Paws' ears perked up, catching the faint sound of laughter, a soft giggle that seemed to emanate from the cracked walls. The cowboy chuckled under his breath. "Well now, looks like we ain't alone, buddy." With the tip of his weathered hat and a reassuring pat on Paws' back, they embarked on a quest to find the source of the laughter, which echoed in the silence of abandoned rooms like a lost memory yearning to be found. The pair tiptoed through the kitchen, each creak of the floor sounding like a cry for help. Paws, ever the brave companion, charged ahead, his tail wagging like a flag of courage. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the wall, and the cowboy jumped back, hat flying off his head. "Whoa, Nellie!" he exclaimed, as Paws barked at the phantom like it was an intruder. To their surprise, the shadow coalesced into a shimmering figure, a young woman in a prairie dress, her translucent form glowing with an ethereal light. "No need to be scared, cowboy," she chimed with a voice as sweet as apple pie, her laughter washing over them like a warm summer breeze. "I'm just here to lend a hand." Their hearts raced with a mix of terror and curiosity as the cowboy shot Paws a quizzical look. "Well, ain't this just the most peculiar day?" The friendly spirit floated closer, her laughter bubbling up like a brook in spring. "I've been stuck here, haunted by my own unfinished business." The cowboy scratched his chin, pondering what could tie a spirit to a dusty old house. "Maybe you just need someone to wrangle those restless memories of yours," he suggested with a grin, tipping his hat back on his head. Paws tilted his head, as if understanding every word. The two of them, a dynamic duo, ready to help a friendly ghost find her peace. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the McGraw house, the spirit led the way, pointing out trinkets and treasures that held stories waiting to be told. Each item, the rusted horseshoe, an old quilt frayed at the edges, sparked a memory that drew out laughter and sighs from the spirit. The cowboy and Paws listened intently, the spirit recounting tales of barn dances and moonlit serenades. "You know, I once tried to bake a pie," she giggled, her face lighting up with glee. "The crust was tougher than a jackrabbit's hide." The cowboy burst out laughing, his deep chuckle filling the house, while Paws wagged his tail as if joining in the merriment. It was a heartwarming reminder that every ghost had a story, waiting to be shared and celebrated. With each room they explored, the cowboy felt a connection forming, not just with the spirit, but also with the history wrapped around them like an old quilt. They reached the attic, a treasure trove of forgotten items, where the spirit grew serious. "This is where my heart lies, cowboy," she said, a note of longing in her voice. The cowboy stood beside Paws, who sat attentively, sensing the shift in energy. "Let's unearth whatever's kept you tethered here," he declared with determination. Together, the unlikely trio rummaged through boxes of memories, each artifact revealing a piece of the spirit's life. With every story shared and laughter exchanged, the cowboy and Paws helped bridge the gap between worlds, unraveling light mystery with a touch of rural comedy, proving that even a ghost could find solace among friends. As the sun dipped low behind the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows across the weathered ranch, the cowboy found himself standing in front of an old, creaking Victorian house. The paint was peeling like an overcooked biscuit, and the wind whistled a tune that sounded like a ghostly lullaby. His trusty German shepherd, Hank, sniffed around the yard, ears perked up like radar dishes, picking up on things that the cowboy could only sense in the pit of his stomach, a mixture of curiosity and unease. The other ranchers had spun tales of the place, claiming the spirit of a long-lost rancher still roamed its halls, bound by some unfinished business. With a sigh, he adjusted his hat, recalling a time when such stories only made him chuckle. But deep down, something about this old house felt different, like a rattlesnake hiding beneath a rock. Despite his reservations, the cowboy felt an odd pull toward the house. Hank seemed to sense it too, wagging his tail and trotting ahead, ever the brave companion. As he stepped onto the creaky porch, the door swung open with a hesitant groan, revealing a dimly lit foyer filled with dust motes dancing in the air. The cowboy chuckled nervously, muttering to Hank, "Looks like someone forgot to pay the light bill." He couldn't shake off the feeling that they weren't alone. Every creak of floorboards echoed like whispers of yesteryears. A sudden draft sent chills down his spine, and the hairs on Hank's back bristled. The cowboy wondered if he was more afraid of what lay inside, or the fact that he was about to find out. Stepping into the living room, time appeared to stand still. An old rocking chair swayed gently in the corner, as if someone had just left it. The cowboy couldn't help but laugh, trying to break the tension. "I reckon that chair's seen more sittin' than I have in my lifetime." Hank tilted his head, eyes shining, as if urging his owner to delve deeper. The cowboy noticed a dusty photograph on the mantel, a family smiling brightly against the backdrop of the ranch. Those faces felt hauntingly familiar, like echoes of a past he couldn't quite place. Was it possible that the spirit didn't want to scare them off, but rather reach out for help? That notion struck him like a bolt of lightning. Perhaps it wasn't just a ghost, but a plea for understanding, an invitation to bridge the gaps of time. Suddenly, a gust of wind rattled the windows, and Hank let out a low growl, pacing in front of the cowboy. "Easy there, partner," he whispered, bending down to scratch behind Hank's ear. "Seems we might have a bit of company." The shadowy corners of the room seemed to pulse with life, shapes flitting just out of view. The cowboy's heart raced, caught between the thrill of adventure and the instinct to flee. Yet there was Hank, steadfast and loyal, grounding him with every wag of his tail. Maybe trusting the spirit wasn't about belief in the supernatural, but a test of courage, and that bond he shared with Hank was the assurance he needed to face whatever lay ahead. Gathering his resolve, the cowboy stood tall, a wide grin cracking through his uncertainty. "All right, spirit, let's see what your business is." As they ventured further into the house, laughter bubbled up, a light-hearted defiance to the weight of the unknown. Hank pranced ahead, nose to the ground, uncovering secrets of the past like a treasure hunter on the prowl. With every creak and moan of the old house, the cowboy felt a sense of purpose igniting within him. This wasn't just a ghost story. It was a chance to connect with history, to heal old wounds. Hand in paw, courage and loyalty intertwined, they were ready for whatever mischief awaited in the shadows of that haunted western home. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dilapidated porch of the old Rattlesnake Ranch. Dust swirled lazily in the evening light, swirling like secrets waiting to be uncovered. The cowboy stood there, his hat tipped low, peering into the haunted depths of the house. Paws, his loyal German shepherd, was sniffing the air with a keen intensity, ears perked like radar dishes tuned to an unseen frequency. The cowboy chuckled, scratching Paws behind the ears. "Well, partner, looks like we ain't just hunting rattlers today." With a nudge from his elbow, he encouraged his furry friend onward, stepping cautiously into the creaky old abode. The boards groaned underfoot, a symphony of long-forgotten memories echoing around them. As they ventured deeper, Paws's instincts kicked in, a low growl rumbling from his throat. He stopped, fixated on a dusty portrait that hung crookedly on the wall. The cowboy squinted at the fading image of a woman, her eyes seeming to follow them with a spectral gaze. "Looks like she's taken a shine to you, boy," he teased. But Paws remained undeterred, sniffing the air like there were clues in the very essence of the ghostly woman. They knew they were in for a wild ride, with Paws acting like a bloodhound on the scent of a long-lost treasure. A light breeze stirred, sending the portrait swaying, and the cowboy couldn't help but grin. "I reckon she's trying to tell us something. Maybe she just wants a good old chat." The two continued their exploration, and Paws darted toward the back room, tail wagging like a flag billowing in the wind. Entering, the cowboy's heart raced at the sight of a dusty old trunk, its latch rusted shut. Paws stood by it, nose pressed to the ground, sniffing with the earnestness of a kid hunting for candy. "What have you found there, my four-legged detective?" he quipped, kneeling down beside Paws. The air felt thick with a strange energy, a whisper of the past swirling around them. There was something almost playful about the way Paws pawed at the trunk, his enthusiasm contagious. The cowboy felt a strong urge to join in, as if the spirit of the house was nudging them toward a discovery that would rewrite the tales of old. With a bit of elbow grease and a couple of muttered curses, the cowboy pried the trunk open. Dust exploded into the air like a cloud of fireflies, and Paws sneezed theatrically, shaking his head like a cowboy after a long day's ride. Inside, they found a collection of faded letters and trinkets that hinted at a life once lived. Jewelry, a pocket watch, and love letters adorned with flowery prose. Paws turned to the cowboy, as if sensing the weight of history resting heavily on their shoulders. "Looks like we've struck gold, buddy." The cowboy's voice was a mix of awe and humor. Together, they pieced together the fragments of a bygone love story, laughter spilling as they imagined the couple's adventures and misadventures, filling the creaky house with life once more. As dusk settled in, the cowboy and Paws emerged from the haunted house, their hearts a little fuller and their spirits a touch lighter. The trunk and its treasures were a reminder that every ghost had a story, and they were lucky enough to be the ones to uncover it. With Paws by his side, the cowboy couldn't help but feel that they were more than just partners in crime. They were a team bound by a shared sense of adventure and the mysteries that lingered in the air. "Let's head home, Paws," he said, chuckling as Paws trotted ahead, tail held high like a banner of victory. The sun bid them farewell, illuminating their trail back home, a new story etched into the fabric of their ever-growing bond, proving that even in the ghostly realms of the past, friendship and laughter reigned supreme. The late afternoon sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the weathered porch of the old Thompson house. With a creak and a groan, the door swung open, revealing an inviting yet eerie interior. The air was thick with dust motes, swirling like whispers of long-forgotten tales. The cowboy stepped inside, his spurs jingling softly, while a low growl emanated from his loyal companion, Paws. The German Shepherd's keen eyes scanned the room, catching the fading sunlight bouncing off an ornate but tarnished brass doorknob at the end of the narrow hallway. It sat there like a sentry, beckoning them forward, as if it had secrets to share, secrets that had been locked away for decades. As they moved deeper into the house, the floorboards creaked beneath their weight, each sound echoing like a ghostly chorus in the stillness. The cowboy chuckled, nudging Paws playfully. "Betcha a biscuit that door's just a fancy decoration." Paws, with his ears perked and tail wagging, seemed to argue otherwise. He sniffed the air, his instincts heightened as they approached the forbidden door. A flicker of movement caught Paws' eye, and he let out a low bark, causing the cowboy to pause mid-sentence. "Easy there, partner. Ain't no coyote lurking round here, just a bit of dust and an old house trying to breathe." Yet, as the door loomed ahead, its aura felt almost alive, a pulse of anticipation thrumming in the air. The door's surface was etched with peculiar symbols that seemed to shimmer in the fading light, drawing both of them closer. The cowboy raised an eyebrow, eyeing the carvings with curiosity. "What in tarnation do you reckon that means?" He rubbed his chin thoughtfully, glancing at Paws, who sniffed at the air as if searching for answers. "You think it's a treasure map or just some fancy art from a time before folks were more practical?" Paws responded by leaning against him, offering comfort and reassurance. The cowboy chuckled again, the sound warm and inviting against the chill of the house. "Well, let's not go jump into conclusions, my friend. We've got enough tales between us without chasing after ghosts." With a deep breath and a determined glint in his eye, the cowboy grasped the doorknob, feeling its cool metal beneath his calloused fingers. Paws stood alert, ready for anything, his instincts heightened. The old wood creaked as the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit room cluttered with dusty furniture draped in white sheets, like sleepy specters waiting for a visitor. "Looks like this place has seen better days," the cowboy muttered, stepping inside. Paws ventured forward, sniffing at the sheets as if they were clues in a grand mystery. The cowboy's heart leapt a little, excitement bubbling up within him. "What do you reckon we'll find? Old quilts, forgotten love letters, or maybe something even spookier?" The room held a palpable energy, an unspoken invitation to explore the secrets hidden within its corners. Cobwebs clung to the walls like veils, and a faint rustling sound echoed from somewhere unseen. Paws' ears perked up, and his tail twitched like a whip. "Whoa there, partner, you hear that?" The cowboy's voice took on an exaggerated whisper, a mix of apprehension and thrill. Paws turned to him with a look that said he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, be it a ghostly figure or just an old, creaky house. With a shared glance, they stepped further inside, both acutely aware that this adventure was just beginning, their bond growing stronger amidst the shadows and secrets of the Thompson house. The sun hung low in the western sky, casting long shadows across the dilapidated facade of the old Whitmore house. Paint peeled like a sunburnt horse, and the porch sagged as if it was trying to hunker down and hide from the world. The air buzzed with a peculiar tension as Cowboy adjusted his worn hat, the leather creaking like the porch beneath his boots. Beside him, his faithful German shepherd, Ranger, stood tall and alert, ears pricked. The whispers of the past swirled around them, enveloping the house in a ghostly shroud. The cowboy took a deep breath, the scent of dust and adventure filling the air, as he pondered what might be lurking behind the creaky door. "Well, Ranger, we ain't letting a couple of ghastly tales scare us off. Time to see what this old shack has to tell." As he approached the door, the rusty hinges groaned in protest, echoing the unease that bubbled inside him. Thoughts of what awaited them danced in his mind, phantoms of cowpokes long gone, treasures hidden behind forgotten corners, or maybe just a raccoon with a penchant for mischief. Ranger whined softly, a low rumble that sent a shiver down the cowboy's spine. "I reckon we both feel it, huh, boy?" He chuckled nervously, trying to ease the tension that had twisted his stomach. With a determined nod, the cowboy reached out, fingers brushing the tarnished doorknob. It felt colder than the creek in December, sending a jolt of electricity through him. Ranger stepped closer, nudging his side, reminding him they were in this together. "You got my back, right? Let's give this ghostly palaver a good old try." With an exaggerated push, the cowboy swung the door open, and a cloud of dust billowed out like a startled jackrabbit. "Woo-wee! It's like a ghost town in here," he hollered, waving his hand to clear the air. Dim light filtered through the grime-coated windows, revealing furniture draped in sheets like specters of the past. A sense of nostalgia washed over him as he remembered tales of the Whitmore family, a band of misfits who loved, fought, and likely haunted in equal measure. His heart raced, excitement battling with trepidation as he took a cautious step inside. Ranger trotted through the threshold, his tail wagging, ready for whatever mystery awaited. "You know, if we find any treasure, I'm making you a fancy collar out of it," the cowboy joked. But the chuckle echoed back, mingling with the silence that hung heavy like a dust storm on the horizon. Just then, a soft creak echoed from somewhere deep in the house, sounding like a whispering ghost calling them further in. The cowboy froze, heart racing like a wild Mustang. Ranger's ears perked up, and for a moment they both stood still, listening with bated breath. "What in tarnation was that?" he asked, more to himself than to Ranger, who despite his own apprehension seemed eager to explore. "Come on, partner, let's nab this mystery by the horns," he urged, the hint of playful bravado returning. They crept toward the sound, the floorboards seeming to groan beneath their weight, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Each step took them deeper into the heart of the Whitmore ghost stories, and with Ranger by his side, the cowboy felt like they could tackle any potential specter lurking in the shadows. As they ventured further into the dim-lit rooms, the atmosphere shifted, thickening with anticipation. Dust motes danced in the beams of light, revealing old photographs of the Whitmore clan, their faces frozen in time. Cowboy chuckled softly at one particularly stern-looking ancestor who could have passed for a mule dressed in a frock coat. "Well, ain't you a fine piece of work?" he exclaimed, nudging Ranger with his elbow. The German shepherd wagged his tail as if to say, "Let's keep going." Cowboy's heart swelled with affection for his four-legged friend. Together, they were a team forged in trust and adventure. With each creaky floorboard they traversed, the cowboy realized that this journey wasn't just about confronting fear. It was about the bond they shared. And if there was treasure or trouble ahead, they were ready to face it together, both in this haunted house and in all the ghostly stories yet to come. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the weathered porch of the old Hawthorne place. Dust danced in the golden light, swirling like spirits caught in a waltz as the cowboy adjusted his Stetson. His loyal German shepherd, Duke, sniffed around the creaky floorboards, tail wagging with an enthusiasm only a dog could muster in the face of an eerie mystery. With a deep breath, the cowboy pushed against the ancient door. It creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway that beckoned them in. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and a hint of something floral, perhaps long dead. Duke stepped gingerly as if he could sense the weight of the home's forgotten stories pressing down on them, each paw on the floor whispering secrets of the past. Stepping inside was like entering a different time. Dust motes floated lazily, and the faint sound of wind whistled through broken windows, creating a symphony of whispers. The cowboy turned to Duke, a playful grin on his rugged face. "Looks like we're not alone, partner," he said, chuckling as Duke gave a low growl, ears perked up like a radar dish. Together, they ventured further down the hall, passing faded photographs of stern-looking folks who once called this place home. The cowboy couldn't help but imagine them as lively characters, maybe even a little quirky. "I bet they had their fair share of shenanigans," he mused aloud, and Duke tilted his head as if in agreement, his tongue lolling out in a goofy grin. As they approached the next door, the cowboy paused. Splintered wood and peeling paint told tales of neglect. He placed his hand on the knob, glancing at Duke, who was fixated on a distant sound, like the faint chime of laughter. "What do you say, bud? You ready for a little adventure?" The German Shepherd pawed at the ground as if to say, "Let's do this." With a swift twist of the knob, the door creaked open, revealing a long, narrow room. The air was cooler here, and the shadows danced on the walls, as if welcoming them into an old friend's embrace. Inside, the cowboy spotted an odd assortment of antiques, the kind you'd expect to see in a dusty thrift store. A rusty old phonograph sat in the corner, alongside a collection of mismatched chairs, each one a testament to a time gone by. "Must have been a hoot back in the day," he laughed, brushing his fingers over a delicate china teacup. Duke darted around, sniffing every nook and cranny, occasionally bumping his nose against a curious trinket. Suddenly, he halted, his body tense and alert. The cowboy's heart raced as he followed Duke's gaze to a cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, its surface murky with age. There, within the glass, an ethereal figure seemed to flicker. A woman in a faded dress, her expression a mixture of joy and sorrow. The cowboy's breath caught in his throat as he exchanged a look with Duke, who barked softly, tail wagging nervously. "Looks like we really caught the attention of the past, huh?" he said, a wry smile creeping on his face. The ghostly figure wavered, her mouth moving in silent conversation. The cowboy couldn't help but chuckle lightly. "Well, shoot. We ain't here to bother you, just looking for a story." Duke, ever the companion, settled beside his master, seemingly ready to protect him from whatever this spirit might conjure. The air crackled with an energy that felt both mystifying and strangely comforting. In that moment, the cowboy knew that whatever haunted these halls, he and Duke were just beginning to unravel its tale, with laughter and love leading the way into the unknown. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty porch of the old Macmillan house, the cowboy stood surveying the eerie silhouette against the backdrop of the sprawling desert. Beside him, Paws, his loyal German shepherd, sniffed the air, ears perked, sensing the peculiar energy that clung to the weathered wood. The creaky floorboards moaned under their weight as they stepped into the dimly lit interior. Dust motes danced in the beams of moonlight that struggled through cracked windows, giving the place an otherworldly glow. The cowboy chuckled softly. "Well, partner, looks like we're not alone in here." Paws gave a low growl, his jaw set as if bracing for an unseen foe. Yet rather than fear, a spark of curiosity ignited between them, forging a bond stronger than the rusted hinges on the door. As they crept deeper into the house, they stumbled upon a faded portrait of a woman in a frilly white dress, her eyes seemingly alive, watching them with an unsettling intensity. The cowboy tipped his hat to her as if to say, "Howdy, ma'am," while Paws sniffed the air, investigating every nook and cranny. A sudden chill swept through the room, and an old rocking chair began to sway gently, though still as a statue otherwise. "Looks like someone's got a knack for the dramatic," the cowboy quipped, nudging Paws with his elbow. The shepherd's tail thumped against the floor, the motion revealing the delight that lay beneath his serious demeanor. The cowboy realized in that moment that their adventure wasn't merely about confronting fears, but perhaps unraveling the mystery of the spirit's untold story. From the corner of the room, an old phonograph sputtered to life, filling the air with a haunting melody that made Paws perk up and tilt his head, as if trying to decode the message within the notes. The cowboy rasped, "I reckon she wants us to dance?" He chuckled, striking a playful pose in an exaggerated dance step, which earned him a confused glance from Paws. But the mood shifted as the cowboy's laughter echoed off the walls, and he twirled around the room, forcing the spirit to join in his whimsical jig. Each clumsy twirl and exaggerated movement brought a flicker of warmth into the room, dispelling the remnants of fear. As they danced, the cowboy and Paws became a delightful trio, the ghostly presence seemingly relishing the moment with gentle nudges of cool air, wrapping around them like a soft embrace. Suddenly, the music ended, and a rush of wind knocked a dusty old book from the shelf. It landed with a thud, sending clouds of dust spiraling like tumbleweeds. The cowboy bent down, prying the centuries-old tome open to reveal faded pages filled with tales of lost love and broken dreams. As he read aloud, Paws cocked his head, his expressive eyes meeting the cowboy's, as if saying, "Keep going, I'm with you." Each word carried a weight that bonded the cowboy to the spirit, a shared understanding of longing and loss. They found themselves unraveling clues from the pages, piecing together the spirit's story, each revelation drawing them closer to the heart of the mystery and the heart of their ghostly ally. Laughter bubbled up as the cowboy mused about how the spirit could maybe use a good pair of boots to dance in. As the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted, a sense of warmth enveloping them as they pieced together the spirit's past. The cowboy glanced sideways at Paws, who seemed emboldened by the newfound kinship. "Looks like we're in the company of old friends now," he said, his voice a blend of awe and laughter. The spirit, now undeniably part of their escapade, swirled around them, manifesting as soft wisps of light, guiding them toward forgotten secrets hidden within the house's creaking walls. The cowboy racked his brain for a way to honor the spirit's story, recalling old traditions of the West, where stories were shared over campfires. He gathered Paws close, their bond reinforcing the laughter that echoed in the haunted halls, uniting them against the shadows. In that moment it was clear, love, friendship, and a shared adventure could bridge the gap between the living and the lost, forming unlikely alliances that turned fear into laughter and mystery into heartwarming memories. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson, the weathered facade of the old Thompson homestead loomed in the twilight. The cowboy leaned against a splintered fence post, his trusty hound, Rusty, sniffing the air with an inquisitive twitch of his ears. The wind whispered through the dry grass, carrying with it tales of ghostly shenanigans that had plagued the homestead for decades. Rusty's tail wagged with a mix of excitement and suspicion, and for a moment it felt like the house itself was alive, chuckling at its own secrets. The cowboy, with his wide-brimmed hat tipped low, shared a knowing glance with Rusty, as if to say, "Well, partner, looks like it's our turn to uncover the mischief hidden within these walls." They stepped onto the creaking porch, the wood groaning under their weight like a cranky old man. The front door, a heavy slab of weathered oak, swung open with an eerie creak, revealing a dust-laden living room bathed in shadows. As they ventured inside, Rusty's nose twitched, honing in on a faint scent that promised both trouble and adventure. The cowboy chuckled softly. "You smell that, buddy? Smells like a good old ghostly prank." With a playful nudge, Rusty darted forward, his paws pattering against the wooden floor, eager to investigate the source of the spectral mischief. The cowboy followed, his heart racing with a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. Every room they entered seemed to whisper secrets, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for an unsuspecting soul to unravel the house's long-forgotten tales. Suddenly, a faint thud echoed from the kitchen, causing Rusty's ears to perk up like antennas on a radio. The cowboy leaned closer, listening intently as the sound came again, followed by what could only be described as a ghostly giggle. "Well, I'll be," he exclaimed, a grin spreading across his rugged face. "Looks like the spirits are throwing a shindig." Rusty, with a gleam of mischief in his eyes, bounded ahead, leading the charge into the kitchen. There, amidst the cobwebs and scattered flour sacks, they found a peculiar sight, a set of pots and pans clanging together as if possessed by an unseen hand. The cowboy couldn't help but laugh. "Seems like they're a bit hungry for attention, eh, Rusty?" With a playful bark, Rusty leaped toward the ruckus, his tail wagging like a flag in a windstorm, ready to join in on the ghostly antics. As they stood amidst the chaotic clatter, a spectral figure began to take shape, shimmering in the dim light like a mirage on a hot summer day. The ghost, a jovial-looking cowboy with a wide grin, was clearly enjoying the mischief he had conjured. "Well, howdy, partner," he boomed, his voice echoing around the kitchen. "Looks like you've stumbled into my little party. Care for a dance?" The The cowboy, never one to back down from a challenge, tipped his hat with a chuckle. "Why not? Rusty and I could use a little two-step in with a ghost." As the cowboy began to shuffle his boots, Rusty pranced around, barking and chasing the ethereal cowboy as if they were old friends rekindling a lost camaraderie. The kitchen transformed into a lively hall of laughter and light-heartedness, where the boundaries of the living and the spectral blurred under the weight of shared joy. With the ghost leading a merry jig, the cowboy joined in, their laughter mingling with the clanging pots, creating a symphony of spectral chaos. Rusty twirled around, his joyful barks echoing through the rafters, infusing the haunted house with warmth and life. "You ain't half bad for a ghost," the cowboy said, grinning widely as he spun Rusty around, their bond stronger than any spectral shenanigans. The ghost chuckled, twirling with a flourish, as if savoring every moment of their unexpected gathering. As the dance drew to a close, the cowboy and Rusty took a breather, leaning against the counter, their hearts lightened by mischief and mayhem. "Well, looks like we made some new friends today," he mused, ruffling Rusty's fur affectionately. The ghost raised a toast with a spectral mug, and for that one magical evening, the haunted house was filled with laughter, bridging the gap between the living and the lost, reminding them all that joy could be found in the most unexpected places. As the sun dipped low behind the jagged mountains, casting long shadows over the abandoned homestead, the cowboy tightened his grip on the worn leather reins. Beside him, his trusty German shepherd named Rusty sniffed curiously at the cracked wooden door, a sentry on high alert. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and the faint echo of laughter, memories clinging to the walls like ghosts. With every creak of the floorboards beneath him, the cowboy felt a tingle run up his spine, as if the house was whispering secrets only he could hear. Rusty's tail wagged in excitement, sensing adventure mixed with a hint of mystery. They were here to uncover the story of the spirit that lingered, a tale as old as the tumbleweeds that rolled by the porch in the evening breeze. Inside, the dim light filtered through dusty windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. The cowboy and Rusty ventured deeper. The familiar sound of occasional clinks and clatters brought both comfort and intrigue. Rusty's ears perked up, every rustle drawing his attention like a moth to a flame. The cowboy chuckled softly. "What do you smell, boy? A ghost or just a whole heap of trouble?" With each step, the house seemed to breathe alongside them, echoing the cowboy's playful banter as fleeting shadows flickered against the faded wallpaper. They stumbled upon an old trunk, its leather cracked and weary. As the cowboy pried it open, an avalanche of letters spilled forth, yellowed and brittle, as if holding the weight of untold stories. Rusty sniffed the letters, his nose wrinkling at the scent of time itself. The letters told of lost love, heartache, and dreams left behind as the world moved on. As the cowboy read aloud, his voice reverberated against the walls, painting vivid images of the life once lived in this dusty abode. Rusty lay at his feet, listening intently, his expressive eyes filled with understanding. "Seems like this spirit had a heart as big as the sky," the cowboy mused, glancing at his canine companion. They were in the presence of a life that had seen laughter and sorrow, and the bond between the living and the departed began to weave itself tighter. The cowboy felt an overwhelming urge to honor this spirit, to ensure that its story didn't fade away into nothingness like the evening light. With Rusty's encouraging nudge, the cowboy devised a plan to tell this tale to the world. Stepping outside for some fresh air, the cowboy leaned against the splintering porch railing, taking a moment to reflect. The sun was setting in a blaze of crimson and gold, a reminder that every ending could birth a beginning. Rusty barked playfully as he chased after a wayward tumbleweed, embodying the spirit of joy that the cowboy had just uncovered in those letters. With a chuckle, he shouted, "What's the matter, Rusty? Think you can outrun a good story?" The dog paused, panting happily, his tongue lolling out, as if to say there was no race against time when it came to the heart's yearnings. The cowboy felt a wave of gratitude wash over him for having this remarkable companion by his side, one who seemed to understand the nuances of every whispering ghost and creaking floorboard. As night descended, the cowboy and Rusty prepared to leave the haunted house with a promise to return. The world outside echoed with nocturnal symphonies, a chorus of crickets, the occasional hoot of an owl, and the rustling of wind through the trees. The cowboy turned back one last time, feeling the presence of the spirit lingering in the air. "Don't worry, friend," he called into the shadows. "Your story ain't over yet. We'll make sure folks round these parts hear about the love and laughter that filled these walls." Rusty barked in agreement, as if sealing a pact between the realms. Together, they rode off into the moonlit night, hearts full, spirits high, knowing their next adventure was just on the horizon, waiting to be unveiled. The cowboy stood at the threshold of the rickety old house, the shadows of dusk wrapping around him like a worn-out blanket. Paws, his faithful German shepherd, sniffed the air, ears perked like radar dishes. The creaking door swung open with a reluctant groan, revealing a living room that looked like it had been frozen in time, covered in a thick layer of dust and crumbs of yesterday's supper. "Well, Paws," he drawled, scratching his chin, "looks like we got ourselves a mystery that's stickier than molasses in July." A flicker of light danced beyond the cobwebbed chandelier, teasing the cowboy to step inside. With a hesitant chuckle, he gestured for Paws to join him, the loyal dog darting in first, tail wagging like a flag in a strong breeze. This wasn't just any old house. It was reminiscent of a ghost story whispered around campfires, where every corner might hold secrets or surprises. As they ventured deeper, the atmosphere thickened with the scent of old wood and something else, something peculiar. A sudden rattling from the upstairs made Cowboy's heart skip a beat. "Did you hear that, boy?" he questioned, though he knew the answer. Paws let out a low growl, the hair along his back standing on end. "Guess we ain't alone after all." Cowboy chuckled nervously, pushing a nearby chair aside that seemed more like a throne for spirits. With each step, the floorboards creaked underfoot, almost as if they were whispering with old grievances. The lurking shadows danced playfully, retreating and advancing, giving life to the cowboy's wild imagination. He felt a kinship with the house, as if it too suffered from the weight of unspoken tales, just like him. They had come to seek out answers, to discover why the haunting lingered, and if their presence might help set the spirits free. Their journey led them to an old, dusty photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It depicted a family long forgotten, faces frozen in time with smiles as wide as the prairie sky. "Look here, Paws," the cowboy said, pointing at the picture with an air of revelation. "These folks must have had some stories worth telling." He stepped closer, wiping the dust away with the hem of his shirt. With each swipe, new details emerged. An old woman with kind eyes, a boy lassoing an invisible steer, and a young girl clutching a worn teddy bear. Paws sniffed the frame curiously, his tail wagging more fervently now, as if sensing the joy captured in that moment. Suddenly, a gust of wind burst through the cracked window, sending the photograph swaying. "Well, shoot! It's like they're trying to tell us something," Cowboy exclaimed with a laugh, his spirit lifting. It was a reminder that sometimes the past wants to be heard, to share its laughter and its tears, just like a good old friend. With renewed determination, Cowboy and Paws made their way to the attic, where dusty beams held the weight of forgotten history. The cowboy's heart raced. This was where the answers might lie. He pulled down a heavy trunk, the hinges creaking like the gossiping old ladies at Sunday service. Paws watched intently, as if he understood the significance of their find. With a gentle tug, the trunk opened, revealing old letters tied with faded string, maps of places once vibrant, and treasures that sang songs of joy and sorrow alike. As the cowboy sifted through the items, he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility wash over him. "These folks deserve to be remembered, don't you think, Paws?" he murmured, and the dog perked up, barking in agreement. It was as if the spirits were bringing him closer, and with each piece of history, he vowed to close the door on the past. but only after sharing their stories with the world. As nightfall settled over the house, Cowboy stood at the entrance again, trunk in hand, with Paws faithfully by his side. The weight of the past felt lighter, as if the house itself was thanking them for their journey. Stars twinkled with a clarity that reminded him of wide-open spaces, and he knew it was time to let go. "We'll take these stories back to town, buddy," he declared, determination lacing his words. "It's high time folks remembered what came before us." Paws let out a contented bark, his eyes twinkling with excitement for what lay ahead. With a final glance back at the house, Cowboy closed the door gently, sealing in the echoes of laughter and whispers, leaving behind the ghosts to rest. Together, they stepped into the night, ready to share their newfound tales, forever bound by the adventure and the warmth of a big-hearted friendship that even the spookiest of houses couldn't unravel. Well, folks, as the sun dips low on the horizon and paints the sky a glorious shade of orange, we find our cowboy and his trusty German Shepherd Duke standing at the edge of that rickety old mansion. After all the ghostly shenanigans and dusty surprises, it turns out the only thing haunting those halls was a lonely heart looking for a friend. Duke, with his nose for trouble, opened that forbidden door. But what came out was a tale of warmth and a sprinkle of laughter, just like a good old country stew. With the mystery wrapped up tighter than a lassoed calf, our dynamic duo heads back down the dirt road, hearts a little lighter and spirits a whole lot brighter. Duke may have sniffed out the supernatural, but it's the bond we share that turned a haunted house into a home again. As we ride off into the sunset, remember this, friends: life's too short to be spooked by shadows. So here's to more adventures, more laughter, and maybe a few more doors to open. Just as long as Duke's around, we'll be safe in the saddle. Until next time, keep your spurs sharp and your hearts open.